Hey guys, Sarah with Three Raptor Consulting here. Very excited to be offering our second class in this series of full-length classes that we are putting on YouTube. And today we're going to be talking about 10 tips for building great partnerships. Now, what we're offering here today, these skills can be used with both for-profits and nonprofits. And you're going to hear me throughout the presentation refer to organizations or agencies, or I'm sorry, use either of those terms, organizations or agency. Those are completely interchangeable, and for the purpose of this presentation will mean either for-profit or nonprofit, depending on what you run. Everything that we share is going to be 100% applicable to both different for-profits and nonprofits. So no matter what you run, I just want you to sit back and relax and definitely take this in. If you have a for-profit and are looking to partner with a nonprofit, most definitely this can be done. Please reach out to us. I'd be happy to schedule a short call just going over with you the finer points of how to create that partnership agreement between a for-profit and a nonprofit. I'm not going to put that in this class, but definitely doable and something that we'll offer at no cost. If you'll just reach out, we'll give you those tips. And so without further ado, let's jump in. All right, so our objective today, we're going to learn how to identify and create partnerships and or collaborations. We're going to understand the difference between a partnership and a collaboration, and we're going to learn how to correctly create and maintain these. All right, so let's jump right in. So we have to understand what they are. So a collaboration is something that is short-term. Typically, it's a one and done. It's a one-time project that you're going to work on, or you're going to be working together for a short amount of time, say no more than 6 months. A partnership is something that's going to be much more long-term, something that you are going to do on a reoccurring basis or for years on end. So why would you want to create a partnership or a collaboration? Well, there's simply sometimes going to be opportunities that arise that are larger than what your agency or organization can handle. You're going to have a need within your agency that you can't meet. There's going to be a need within the community, or an agency goal is larger than anticipated, or the end results will be better if a collaboration or partnership was created. My favorite, it definitely saves money, but it increases your impact drastically. It increases your marketing, and it also increases your sphere of influence, and it creates a diversity within your client base. So one of my favorite examples that I love to give is working and owning and operating a small for-profit business. One of the things that I would love to do is have somebody to do all of my marketing, right? But for me, this isn't a full-time position. This would probably be a part-time position of maybe 20 hours a month, maybe 30 hours a month, but it's hard to hire somebody on such a part-time basis and make sure that they're paid a fair wage. So one of the things that I would love to do is form a partnership with 2 or 3 other small businesses that also need somebody to do their marketing and their social media, whose hours would be complementary to what I need, where we could all employ this person part-time, but through the 3 part-time employments, that person makes a full-time wage that is very fair. So that's something that I really encourage small businesses and nonprofits to look into, is sharing specialized talent. Is something I'm going to be looking into very soon. All right, so how do you know which to choose? It's going to be definitely what you're looking for. Is this a one and done? That's a collaboration. Is there a possibility that you could work again? That's probably a partnership. How do your visions align? Now, remember, a vision is what you do, what problem you're hoping to solve. And as a small business and a nonprofit, you should both be working to solve a problem. I realize that sounds very negative, but ultimately we're here to solve the problems of the communities we serve. It's not negative at all. We're very positive, forward-thinking people, right? And we also have to think what the overall goal is. So because collaborations are short-term, these are, things that you maybe do once a year that you won't foresee yourself working on more than that 2 or 3 months around the event. It's just for a season. Maybe you guys create collaborations to do marketing in Q4. It's anything like that. But collaborations are usually 3 months or shorter. I would say you could probably push this to 6 months. A partnership is something that's going to be more long-term, something you're going to work on pretty much around the calendar, and you're going to have to be very clear in how expenses are going to be paid and profits are going to be shared. Now, just a real quick note, in the nonprofit world, we typically call this a fiscal sponsor, the person who, or fiscal agency, the person who all the money funnels through. You can do this in a for-profit too. If you are doing a partnership or collaboration where money is going to be involved, it's easier if there is just one fiscal agent and they do a complete accounting and then disperse funds as needed. So really think about how you're going to do that. You may at some point need to get an attorney involved, but if you have all your ducks in a row and have a good outline of what it is you want to achieve and how things will be divided, it'll be much easier for you and the attorney. So you want to make sure that you protect all parties. You never want to launch into any partnership or collaboration where one party, organization, or agency could be held liable or could take the fault or could take a fall. You want to make sure that everybody is as protected as you can be. So this is going to take a lot of pre-work, and I really recommend that you roll up your sleeves and do this pre-work. Now, if you do this well, especially for partnerships, you don't have to do it more than once. If you do it well, even for a collaboration, it still gives you an incredible framework for any other collaborations or partnerships that you are going to have moving forward. So here's the essential items. You need to determine if there is going to be a lead agency. This would be the person who is like the one who talks to the press, who speaks to the press, the one who plans meetings or hosts things, the ones who maybe has a little bit of a bigger stake. Who's going to be that fiscal agency? How will reporting be done? Whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, I really encourage you to include this reporting, especially with your goals and finances. This is what's going to build that trust between the different organizations and really help you to maintain this working relationship. And who's going to pay for expenses and how profits will be divided. And these are 5 key questions that if you truly take the time to answer these, you're going to be set up for success. Now, once you decide everything, we highly recommend a memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement or even a contract. We want to make sure that everybody reads and understands and approves this MOU, MOA, or contract, and that once all this paperwork is signed, you are ready to get started. Now, please don't start any work or sign any contracts into place until everybody is 100% in agreement of how those previous 5 questions are going to be answered and handled. During this, you want to meet regularly to discuss your progress. Now, I am not a person for meetings. Meetings are not my favorite thing, but you definitely want to schedule these. Now, if this is long-term, maybe you can meet quarterly, and in between those quarterly meetings, you can send updates through emails. But however it is that you're going to report that progress, make sure you define that. Make sure you also are ready to discuss how challenges will be overcome, if you can call emergency meetings, who's going to be your subject matter expert. You always want to measure your progress, because when you're right in the heart of a big project or collaboration like this, it's hard sometimes to see how far you've come. And you always want to be monitoring your expenses to your revenue. Now, in some situations, it is going to be expense heavy at first, and then your revenue comes in later. However that is, be sure that everybody understands it and that you're definitely watching the budget that you created and that you're sticking to that. After everything is done and completed, you want to have that final meeting where you review a full report that includes all the decisions that were made, an overview of the entire project, the failures, the successes, a complete financial report. You want to understand where all of the money went, how you're going to divide the profits, and who's going to be the person who reports out to the media. Now, if you are a nonprofit, you will need to determine if there's been grants involved, who is going to report out to those grants. If it was one grant that was written by multiple agencies, you only typically need to submit one report. So make sure that you understand who's going to do that. Now let's talk about some tips for building this great partnership or collaboration, right? Make sure that you move at a slow pace. Slow and steady wins the race. Whenever you are working with multiple agencies, you don't want to rush. Even if you've done partnerships and collaborations in the past, you still don't want to move forward at breakneck speed. You want to make sure that you take time to build strong foundations, that you answer those 5 key questions that we listed right away, and that you know how everything is going to be handled, and that you review and set boundaries and goals. Remember, it's endurance that wins a race, not speed. Sometimes you have to admit that you're wrong. So you want to start every journey with humility. You want to make sure that one of the key things that you do is that you check egos at the door, that there's no one agency that's going to take over and have more power or control, or one person. You want to make sure that there's fair playing all the way around. You want to make sure that you have the ability to say that you were wrong and maybe this project needs to be ended, or how one agency could exit. You want to make sure you have those things in the right place, and you want to admit to yourself that if you were wrong, you learned from this. Because remember, at 3 Raptor Consulting, we don't believe in failure. There was never a failure. As long as you learn something and grow from the situation, it's always a success. A quote I love to steal from the famous performer Pitbull is that their mistakes or must takes. They're not mistakes, they're must takes. These are lessons that you have to learn. And sometimes the only way to learn is by being wrong. But as long as you learn, it's never a failure. Build your network. When you realize that you need to go into it, create a partnership or a collaboration, look at who's in your network and then be willing to build your network. And remember, for-profits and nonprofits can work together and create partnerships. All of this is 100% legal and can be done. You want to make sure that you really look at everything that's out there in your community and that you pick the best fits for creating a successful partnership or collaboration for this project. Know who you are, what your values are, and what your vision is. You want to make sure that you really have these key things defined for every person. That is really going to allow you to come together in this partnership and collaboration and understand if you should be working together and how this working relationship is going to look. Make sure that you aren't duplicating something. Whether this is in the for-profit world or the nonprofit world, you want to make sure that within your community, this isn't a duplication. If this is something that could be seen as a duplication, and maybe you need to look at what that is and offer to come on board to expand what is currently already there. But regardless of your station, for-profit or nonprofit, you want to make sure that you're not duplicating anything, that you're always creating something new that is working to solve a new problem or work with a new group of people. Remember to be intentional, be tactical, and avoid perfection. I have a rule around here at 3Raptor where, we just go for the art of good enough. And what that means is you can get caught up in a lot of details throughout the day and throughout working on a project. The example that I always give is, let's say that you're putting on a big gala event and you wanted salmon colored napkins, but when the event comes, they come out to be rose pink. Here's the deal. Nobody but you in that committee is going to know that they were supposed to be salmon. And so there's no reason to stress about it at all. It's called the art of good enough. Within that art of good enough, you're giving yourself permission for some of the details to not be perfect. Now, your main details like, reporting, goals, boundaries, finances, those need to be as close to perfect as possible. But all of your supporting details, those don't need to be perfect. You want to make sure that you are achieving your goals, not striving for perfection. There's a huge difference. You want to define roles and lanes, and then you want to make sure that you stay in your lane. Or in other words, you want to set healthy boundaries. If you have multiple agencies working together, you want to make sure that each agency understands what their role is, what their boundaries are, and what their focus area is. I always say put everything in writing, create job descriptions, create partnership descriptions, make sure that you clearly define boundaries and roles. That way people understand who is responsible for what. Now, if I was working on, say, communications and somebody else was working on reporting, as I was working on communications, I might come up with some suggestions for reporting. That is 100% okay. By saying, hey, Steve, while I was working on communication, I had these ideas on how we could make reporting easier or some points that we should report on. Here are my 3 things that I think we should be working on. Let me know what you think. You always want to be able to make those recommendations, and you always want to be able to talk between the different roles and boundaries. It's just, that is healthy, and that is creating that true art of collaboration and partnership. What wouldn't be healthy is if I said, hey, Steve, I've decided we're also going to report on these 3 things. Never, never, never is that good. Especially if you're the leader, you should never just push and override other people's feelings like that. Always ask questions and offer to help. If you don't understand something 100%, or if something is not quite clear to you, somebody else in the room doesn't understand it either. So be the brave person and ask that question. Always be willing to offer help. I've always, every time I've worked on partnerships and collaborations, said, hey, this is what I'm working on, but if anybody in these areas needs help, I am more than happy to jump in and help. I just need you to tell me what you need from me. And I always make it very clear that I want someone to tell me what help they need. That way they're setting the boundaries and I am answering and operating within those boundaries. It's not me forcing myself on someone. Make sure that you check in just to check in, maybe send out an email and say, hey, the first week is going great. I've achieved my top 3 pointers. I have some extra time if anybody needs help, but make sure that you really check in and make communication key, and make sure that you have weekly check-ins, maybe not necessarily meetings. Create structure. You always want to have that strong structure and strong foundations. This isn't about putting one person in power or one agency in power. This is about defining roles. So like, who is maybe the agency that organizes all the meetings and maybe hosts all the notes? Who's the agency that's going to be that fiscal agent? who is going to be the agency that is in charge of communication. Like really take time to create that structure and define how that's going to work. Ask questions regularly. Now, remember, even if something is clear to you, but you suspect it might not be clear to somebody else, make sure to ask questions. Now, don't ask questions just to ask questions. Make sure you're always asking questions to add value, or because you know if you ask this question, it's going to trigger somebody else to make a great, contribution. Make sure that you always are striving for clarity and for building a closer relationship, not questioning why somebody did something. And those are our 10 great tips on building partnerships. There's a lot more that goes with partnerships and collaborations. And if you would like to learn anything more, again, reach out. If you're looking to create a partnership between a nonprofit and a for-profit, we're here to give you those questions. So just reach out and we'll schedule a time to chat.